No, I just got a haircut yesterday. A quick cut.
Oh, okay.
It's a little longer than.
Yeah.
It's more natural.
Oh my god, the guy yesterday was like talking so much in Korean to me, and this happens every time I go to this barber. He knows I'm from America, but he just overestimates my Korean
And just talks.
And yesterday I had to several times be like, I'm sorry, I don't know what word you just used. I don't know what you just said. And it was very embarrassing. And it makes me not want to go to him, but he's a really good barber. It's so frustrating. And then today, even on the phone, I was with Hyundai card. I'm getting a credit card right now.
Dude, me too.
Nice.
I was on the phone with them today too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice. But I was just like, 이해 잘 못했어요. 한 번 더 뭐 천천히 얘기하시면 좋을 것 같아요. And then she was like, she was using different words. Like she was using very simple words. Yeah, and I was like, thank you. But then I was able to get everything.
That's nice because mine just slowed it down like I was a dumbass, but still using the same vocabulary.
The same vocabulary. Yeah.
I was like, no.
Really?
I'm gonna launch into this epic intro. I'm gonna do something different today. Okay.
Okay.
Ahoy, mateys! Welcome to the Side Dish Podcast. Arr. Today, we're weathering the stormy seas of recent events in our lives, mental health, and obviously Celine's delicious dish of the week.
It was good, and then it dropped off.
Okay, well, I mean, I tried.
Yeah.
But also, how fitting, I was watching SpongeBob yesterday.
There we go.
You know, I watched SpongeBob for the first time almost ever a little while ago. And
That's
then,
crazy. That
and
was
then
your
that's
first
insane.
time.
Yeah,
Whoa.
and then it had the transition of like 2 hours later, and I didn't know that that's where that.
That's where it
meme
comes
came
from. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But I love how SpongeBob does like it could be like 20 minutes later. It could be like 3 years later. 1 eternity later.
No,
they have so much fun with it as like a segue.
Exactly.
Yeah, as a
and
joke.
I also, for some reason, never knew that was like a French accent until I got a little bit older.
You had until you went to France.
Yeah, I was like, what? I thought it was just being funny, but that's a French accent.
Well, you know, speaking of France, I was getting my haircut yesterday, and my barber. Now you know where my mind's at. Yeah,
slip.
my barber was like, "Hey, how was your honeymoon? How was France?" Because when I got my haircut last time, it was right before I got married, and I was telling him about my honeymoon to Italy. And he just mistook it as France. So he was like, how was France? And I was so confused. I was like, I couldn't really understand what he was saying to me. So that was the point of confusion.
Did you just run with it and say,
France
I
was just like, oh, no,
great.
좋았어요. And I was like, did he say France in that sentence? But it reminds me that, first of all, Celine has the dish of the week. So maybe I should let you introduce. But so, yeah.
Sure.
Well, take it away.
So I read this article, which for those of you listening, you probably have read it because it went semi-viral.
Oh, wait, did it really?
Among millennials. It's an article called The Case Against Travel by Agnes Callard. And I read it.
It went viral as in like you saw people circulating it and
it was
talking about
circulating and people were talking about it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, that actually is so reassuring because I was like, am I crazy to have like a really strong reaction to this article?
I think like we're supposed to have a strong reaction to it. And then also the way she writes it is very...
God, it's so bloated and academic, actually.
Okay, so I'm going to give some context on the author and then also how I read it. So my sister sent it to me at the tail end of our Europe trip this summer, which the trip was great and everything, but I had a hard time for like a number of reasons, and I was really struggling by the time the trip was ending. And she sent it to me, and I think I was at the airport, and I was like, yep, I'm never traveling again.
You were in the mindset.
Yeah, I had already kind of made up my mind that like after this, I'm not going to travel for a really long time. And then my sister sent me the article kind of just reaffirming all these things that I was like thinking about over the last couple weeks. And then I had an equally strong reaction as Erin did, except I was agreeing with her. And then some context about the author. She's a associate professor of philosophy at U Chicago. She's a philosopher. So she approaches this in a very philosophical manner. And she's very academic. Like her, I've read some other stuff that she's written, which I've actually really enjoyed. But I don't always loved this style of writing.
I really didn't like it.
It's only like for certain topics I like it. I actually think this is a great topic, but I think it could have done with like a little bit more pared down language.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But she approaches it in a philosophical way. But I think so the case against travel, you can guess what it means by the title, but it basically is just an argument for like why do we assign such virtue to the activity of traveling? Like, yes, we all get that traveling is fun. That's obvious. We can all agree on that. But why do we see it as this like life-changing, virtuous activity that will enlighten us and educate us and all that stuff?
Right.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with that. My critique of the article was that she took big leaps in logic to be like, this is why people do it. But
Yeah.
Because you could replace that word for like the case against concerts. Why would we visit a concert, right? What value do we get really from like listening to our favorite artists, whatever, perform? Because like when we traveled to Italy, me and my wife, like, yeah, we did a lot of touristy shit. So I was reading that article from a different lens than you were reading it initially, Celine. Because I was reading it being like, I loved Italy. I loved the Sistine Chapel.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I was in there being like, this is it, man. This is why people come to Rome, you know? And there were so many things in the article I did agree with. It really resonated with me. And maybe my aversion is because it resonated. Because I definitely know what she's talking about. She's like, you know, people want to travel to certain countries. Hey, how was Italy? What did you do?
Yep.
We went to the Sistine Chapel, as if that is the sort of reason why we went. But it's not, obviously. But it does color my experience of the culture. It colors my experience of being in a place that's not where I'm normally from, interacting with people that are not like me, don't speak the same language as me.
Yeah.
And I don't think the author, at least in the article, she didn't acknowledge the value of just dynamism.
The diversity of experience. Yeah.
Because like, again, like you could replace the case against travel with so many different activities. And a lot of her arguments would apply to that. Because her thesis kind of was like, is this just a waste of everyone's time?
Right.
You know?
Exactly. And I think like the reason why this maybe went viral was because of the timing of it, that like 2023, post-pandemic 2023 definitely is the biggest travel year so far since 2019. And also there's this whole thing going around. It's like, why is everyone in Europe? Like, why is everyone and their mom in Europe?
That's a great point.
Yeah, which is absolutely true. And like, it's so funny because like, obviously I was in Europe this summer, but then when I got back from Europe, all I saw in my feed was like people in Europe.
Yep. Totally.
And you see, it's the same thing that you see over and over again.
That's
but
true.
Which I want to bring up with you guys. Or actually, I want to ask you this question first, and let's answer it honestly. Do we enjoy hearing about people's travels? Is this like a point of conversation that we enjoy? Do we like hearing about what did you do? Where did you go? Do we like seeing pictures? Like, what do we feel about it? Jay?
I do enjoy it. And I enjoy like when my friends like go travel and they post on their stories of like little things that they do, especially if it's kind of not the stereotypical thing that you'd expect from like Italy. Like Aaron just posted a picture of like this really beautiful beach scenery, which reminded me of a scene from The Talented Mr. Ripley. And I commented on it. I was like, this looks exactly like this. And I like that. And like, if someone travels, then I want to hear about it because it might influence whether I go on that same trip, or if I'm planning on going, then maybe I'll like do the same thing that they did. So I think I do enjoy listening to it. But if they're gonna just be like, oh yeah, I like went to the Sistine Chapel, or
Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Jay.
Repeat
Literally just
Aaron
said
and
that.
Jayan's itinerary.
No, totally. I mean, I agree with what Jay's saying too. Like, I actually do like it.
Okay.
And I think I like it because it's interesting to hear how people like digest travel. Like when someone shares a travel story, if they say their highlight of the trip was the Sistine Chapel, my next question isn't like, but doesn't everyone do that? My question is like, why? You know, what was it about that really loved you? Because like, I don't know how to describe it, but I can understand that tourism itself, like, at large looks pretty like grotesque and kind of
I mean,
capitalist.
it is.
Yeah.
It actually is a grotesque activity, and nothing makes it more apparent than when become a tourist, where you realize, like, oh, actually, I am just like all these annoying Americans
Yeah.
in line here. There's no difference in the sense that we're all here for the same reason. We're trying to do the same thing, and we're from the same place,
Yeah.
speaking the same language, acting the same way in a lot of ways. But it's very grotesque because I don't feel like myself. But then it's almost like, well, I have to do it. I'm here. I have to do this thing that like I chose, but like I don't necessarily like want to be here in this
There's
moment.
like an
with
obligation when
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
traveling.
yeah.
You're like, you're only here for a limited amount of time.
Yeah.
So you want to make the most of it. So even if you're exhausted,
Yeah.
you're going to walk 30,000 steps and like
Yeah.
Exactly.
go to every
That's
single
actually a
place.
do
good
the
point too,
thing.
because like when I went to China a few years ago, my buddy Diptesh, who I was traveling with, was like, "We have to go to the Great Wall," and I was initially like, "Bro, come on." I'm glad that he forced me to, though. I really
yeah.
am. It was a spectacle that was nothing like what I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Honestly, like even the bus ride there, the gondola we took up, like seeing a Subway sandwich at the base of the fucking wall, like these are all things I would not have garnered informationally had I not gone there. And I'm so glad I have an opinion about it too. So, you know, the case against travel, I understand it, but I'm so staunchly against everything she said because it's like, of course you should travel. Why wouldn't you? Why would you want to stay your entire life in the same place? It makes zero sense. Also, all the fucking thinkers that she brought up in her article as like examples of people who
Oh, they're philosophers. Yeah.
yeah.
But also,
For
they
the most
probably
part.
couldn't travel very
Bro,
far.
most of the writers or thinkers she brought up were historically
no
known to be
airplane.
grumpy, fucking antisocial people. Like Pessoa is one of my favorite writers, but he's known for writing very introspective, moody prose. He also wrote under dozens of pseudonyms, and that's why when people attribute work to him or writing to him, you can't take it at face value. That's even what he thought. And especially Emerson. Come on, Emerson and the Transcendentalists were infamous for not wanting to ever leave like Vermont.
Right,
You know, they
right.
just loved nature. That was their whole
Right.
fucking shtick. So, and also, let's not forget that back in their day, travel was such a luxury and such a privilege
Yes.
that I'm sure that they were scorning the upper classes who would travel just for the
That
sake
could
of
have been,
going.
yeah, and
you know,
right, and I think that also interestingly is kind of the same reason why we all, you know, make fun of people traveling now on Instagram because Instagram travel is such a thing. It's such a
yeah.
and it can get really it can feel like a lot sometimes where you're like how, first of all, how is everyone affording this, right? That's like the thing that's going around. It's like, how is everyone affording a month in Italy in July, right? I actually disagree with you, Aaron, on I don't think people have to travel in order to see the world or to be educated. I actually think that it's totally possible to stay in one corner of the world or travel domestically or travel around where you are
and be
yeah,
learned,
be
and
learned
knowledgeable.
and but not
Yeah.
only learned, happy and content.
Absolutely.
Of course.
And I do agree with a point that she brought up was that are we all just trying to escape something, which I think that's why I travel. And I think that's why a lot of us travel. It's because we're not happy with where we are. Or we think that going somewhere will give us something.
Sure, but that's all, I feel like that's the philosopher in her that's like extending the definitions of like escape, for example. Because people get reprieve and
Because
escape.
travel is an impulse too. Like traveling for some people.
For some people.
Yeah.
Not all people.
Yeah.
Actually, I'd say for most people I know, it's a very planned activity. It's something you look forward to. It's maybe even a reward to some people. The idea of escape is that word really stuck with me because the word escape connotes like trapped and needing to be somewhere else to, and I don't know if that's the word I would use. I think travel is reprieve, maybe. Reprieve meaning like, okay, I can just relax now. Like I have some sort of, I have allowance to not think about work, namely work, right? For like a few
So
days.
it's like the difference between reward and escape.
Yeah,
Two
and I
ways
think
of
that
thinking.
For a
that's
finite period of time.
absolutely, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I that's an indictment to me on the capitalist system that your time is
No,
measured
definitely.
by how much you make, and if you're not working, then what are you doing? So like travel becomes a sort of shorthand for I'm taking a break from capitalism.
Right.
Ironically, you're engaging in capitalism way more as a traveler.
Exactly.
But like
Yeah.
that's one point that I was like, she should bring this up. She should acknowledge that that is a driving point.
Right.
I think I'm in between both of you guys
Yeah.
because on one hand, like I associate more with escapism with not with travel, but like someone thinking, oh, if I move away from my city to this other place, then I'm going to escape this thing.
That too.
And then
yeah.
my life will be better because I'll be open to more things. But I think that when you do travel, like your perspective can change in a way that it's hard to do if you're just sitting in your apartment and like researching what Italy is like or what China is like. It's different if you look at a picture of the Great Wall or look at a picture of the Sistine Chapel. If you see it for yourself, like it really you can't capture, especially like the insides of buildings and like
no, I agree.
vastness of the Great Wall, which I've never seen, but I imagine it's really amazing. Like
It's pretty sick.
I don't think that can be captured in like photographs or movies
Or even a
like,
video.
No,
yeah,
I
not
agree. I
videos.
agree that you
And-
can't ever replicate seeing
Yeah.
anything in real life, but I don't agree that we have to see these things.
Right.
Yeah, you
Because-
don't-
So article brought up something interesting, and I wasn't sure exactly what it meant, and so I'm curious to how it hit your ear. But she was like, when people are tourists, they are kind of the people from the home country are like more in getting more from the visitor than the visitor is getting from them. Which I was like, is that even true? I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember rereading that phrase like several times. It's like, what does she mean by this?
Yeah.
And I think I settled on travelers go there to try to pick up on the locals, but then she's saying that no, like the locals are more affected because they will maybe litter or like just
She's
like,
saying they'll be affected in a negative way.
yeah,
Oh,
that's what
okay.
it sounded like.
Mhm.
And
Probably.
I remember going to Thailand and thinking that wow, tourism is kind of really ugly
mhm.
because there's so much pollution created by tourism and wildlife or like wild
Yeah.
animals
Yeah.
that are just being
Especially in
mistreated
Thailand, yeah.
because of tourism and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
like locals are being affected because they need to make money or like
Mhm.
that's the way that they make a living
Mhm.
to please these tourists. And that's how I kind of interpreted
I mean, the
that.
article also brings up this thing of like, there's a sort of expectation of what you are and aren't supposed to do when you visit a certain place.
Mm.
And going back to what Celine's saying is like, yeah, like, or even Jay is like, when you go somewhere, people expect you to do certain things. When you come back from a trip to, you come back from a trip from Egypt.
Oh,
it's like,
yeah.
how are the pyramids? Oh, I
Right,
didn't go.
exactly.
You didn't see the pyramids?
Yeah,
what
yeah,
was
yeah.
the point of your trip? And I
Yeah.
feel like that is something that we hear coded into a lot of conversation, right?
Definitely.
Now, that is totally a valid point. But we all know as travelers, too, that we've been to places, at least Jan and I, and you too, Celine. We were in Rome. We were like, should we go to Colosseum? Yeah, let's check it out. But we couldn't get inside, and we were not bummed at all. We were just like, okay, fine. Like, we're not going
No.
to see the inside. We're not going
Yeah.
to wait for 3 hours in line to see the
No.
inside of this ancient complex. Like, I'm just happy that we came here. We made the effort to learn about this place and see it.
Yeah.
But I will never denigrate anyone who wants to at least see the site where it is.
Oh no,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
And it was valuable to me, I guess, because look, like I don't know a lot about antiquity, but I had to learn it a lot in college, right? So going to Rome it was like a reminder of some knowledge that I had gained a long time ago, and recontextualized as an adult. It
Yeah.
it forced me to restructure my brain, thinking about empires or thinking about commerce or thinking
Yeah.
about development. And I was like, damn, this is so sick that full circle. I learned about this when I was 18 and now
Yeah.
I'm 35 and I'm actually seeing it. And I'm also seeing how long it's lasted. And it did leave an impression on me. Now, the article also says, you know, every impression that someone has about an experience is like self-regulated and you can't trust it, which I also found.
That's just the philosopher in her.
Yeah,
it's
but
like
I was,
didn't even have to be in there.
It's
yeah.
true, but exactly. That's the philosopher in her. Because there was like a priori, a
Yeah, like who
posteriori
would the
knowledge.
average person reading this? Who would even think? You
That-
know what I mean? That's
That
not,
same
yeah,
logic
yeah.
applies to literally everything
Yeah,
else.
yeah, yeah,
I like
yeah.
hamburgers. Well, that's just you. how do
Because,
you
yeah.
know you like hamburgers?
Yeah, how do you
it's
know
like,
you like
what the
hamburgers?
hell are you
Yeah.
talking about? Like, I like.
Yeah.
Who cares if I'm wrong about me liking hamburgers?
Yeah.
You know. So at the end of the day, travel is also such a personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to engage with travel, I feel like the problem actually is that travel has turned into just a capitalist machine. It's just an
I
industry.
think that's
and then
why
that's
this
really
was
the critique.
published,
Yeah.
right? It's like not that it wouldn't be a problem if like the idea of travel was so commoditized to the extent that and commercialized the way that it is now and displayed on social media to the point where like I think a lot of people feel like it's being shoved down their throats or that like yeah, because the whole point of the article was like, why is travel virtuous? It's just a fun thing that we do.
I personally, I don't brag about traveling.
It's
I
like
do know,
a pointed thing at people who brag
I
about.
do know
where-
people
yeah.
who do brag about it, or people who have
And-
maps on their walls of like all the countries.
Right.
But I don't turn my nose up to that either because it's
No,
like
I don't.
I'm
Yeah.
actually very impressed by people who travel a lot, but maybe that's what the article is also trying to get me to question is like, why is that
Is
impressive?
why, yeah.
And it did make me question that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That reminds me of this one part that I remember from the article where she recounts a couple who goes to some place and they watch like villagers dance and they see them having like an authentic like local experience and they were like, that was okay. But then they go back and then they recount the story to like one of their friends. And
Yes.
then they're like, oh my
They
God, it was like the most
play it up. Yep.
amazing experience. Like we were with the locals. And then they go back on this trip with this friend and they go to the same experience and then they just watch the friend to see like, are they enjoying it as much?
are they confirming our
like-
experience?
And I agreed very much with this sentiment of people treating travel as like this performative thing, especially in the age of social media where you could post things and like, or you'll go to like a flower field and
Yeah.
just to like take the
yeah.
picture of the flower field instead of really appreciating it.
Yep.
And
yeah, instead of smelling the flowers, you take a picture of them.
I mean,
yeah.
it's like that's now what travel is. And like the stuff that we see on Instagram, like even from everything from like the average, influencer to these travel bloggers with millions of followers, like the way that they're traveling, it's not how they're portraying it. Like you can follow somebody who's talking about a transformative experience in Azerbaijan or whatever, that they
Yeah.
traveled through the mountains and they slept with the local, not slept, like literally slept with the locals.
They slept among the
They
locals.
slept among the locals. And then you like what it is okay, so you went on this super hurried trip where you spent probably 0.5 seconds at each location. You just took pictures because you had to take pictures in those places.
You nodded your head as your guide explained the rich history.
And then next, like, got to move on to the next thing because you have an itinerary. And also, they're there to make content. So that kind of cancels it out where it's
Sure.
like, if you're there to make content, that's the priority. And I think to me, like, I do feel that way. I do get annoyed because like when I go, I'm sure you guys in Italy saw, Jayan and Aaron saw all these tourists trying to get the shot. And it's
Oh my God, yes.
fucking annoying. I'm sorry, it is annoying.
Well, it is annoying. It is annoying. But I'm not better than them because I did the same thing. Like for example, we were in
no
the Vatican
one's
Museum
better,
and
but-
there was a window that gives you like the perfect quote unquote shot of the key shape of Vatican City. It's a beautiful shot. But you remember, babe, it was so hot in that room. Everyone's crying by this window.
Yeah.
And then it was like, should we wait to get the photo or should we just go to the next
Right.
room? And I did have a sort of mental like, we don't have to get that shot, but we're here. So let's get the fucking shot. You know?
Right,
So we did
right.
wait. We pushed our way to the front. We got the photo.
Right.
And that photo will sit in my phone. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't even post it. It'll sit in my phone. It's a memory that we share. I'm glad for that. But I do know what you're saying about you have to get these certain, I guess, markers to indicate to other people, like signal to them that you've done the touristy thing.
Right.
You appreciate the culture.
Culture.
You got that gelato everyone's talking about.
Yep.
You went to that sandwich shop. But also, can I just say, Celine, because your sister is an influencer, you have a different perspective on it because you're closer to what this article might be referring to, I would argue.
Yeah, it's not glamorous at all. Like the way that influencers travel, I have a limit. Like it's really tiring. They are just go, 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 no rest, no smelling any flowers.
Mhm.
Content has to be created at all hours of the day.
Yeah.
Itineraries very strict. There's no room for like relaxation or smelling the flowers.
It's funny because then it begs the question then when she refers to J.K. Chesterton or Francesco Pessoa and all these people who died in like 1930, right? Like, what were they criticizing?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
well, obviously no social media back then, but they were probably
something
maybe
similar.
It's jealousy.
I mean, they are
Maybe?
artists, so yeah, all these guys were artists.
I think that has.
And they're very jealous.
Yeah,
Artists
actually,
are
I
jealous
think
people.
jealousy definitely. I would be confident saying that because that's a universal human emotion
It's like
and has been around forever.
because I would only imagine. I feel like the time of travel, I guess, in America probably took off in the 60s, right? When like commercial air travel became big.
But the rich people were traveling for leisure
sure.
en masse, even by the
totally.
the beginning of the 20th century.
Totally.
Yeah.
I actually had that thought the other day, not about this article, but just like when you read these like diary entries from these famous writers, for example, being like, Maud is in Switzerland on, getting some air. And like she's like some rich dude's wife is like taking 3 months in Switzerland
she
to
has
like breathe air.
consumption.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because she has tremors.
Yeah,
and like
yeah,
she's gonna breathe the air there for 3 months. Like that's her travel, quote unquote.
Right.
But like I feel like that was maybe more of what those guys were referring to, but I'm not sure. They did not have Mickey Mouse hats. They did not have magnets of Roman Colosseums back in those days, but I'm sure they had something
Right.
similar, right? So maybe what those writers were criticizing was that commercialization. It was that impersonal kind of
It could have also
consumption.
been that like a lot of these people, these rich people, really wealthy people who were traveling, like the 1%, back then only the 1% could travel for leisure.
Mm-hmm.
Like the people who were doing that were coming back and like publishing books
Totally,
and
totally.
articles and setting up foundations and doing all this shit.
Right.
That-
that's fucking annoying.
Yeah.
It's like your friend who comes back
Like
from a
tale as
study
old as
abroad
time.
in
Yeah.
Europe being like,
And suddenly they're
love
French.
paella.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think like it just comes down to the fact that like, okay, let's say the Instagrammers, right? Like Instagrammers will post these things that make people feel that they also have to do that or that they suddenly desire that, they suddenly want that. And making people feel like, oh, this is something that I need to do in order to be like, I don't know, fill in with any adjective you want.
cultured,
Yep.
accepted. Yeah.
Accepted, like interesting, anything. And I think the disingenuousness of that is what she's criticizing because like you don't have to travel. And I really do believe that.
Yeah.
Nobody has to travel. Nobody has to see.
Can I tell?
not
Can I tell you a
requirement.
story of disingenuousness on a travel trip?
Yeah.
I was in Austin in like 2017 for work, and I wanted to go to Franklin Barbecue because it's
Super famous.
super famous.
Yeah.
So I waited in line. I went like kind of towards the end of the day, which that means it's like 2:00 in the afternoon. So by the time I got into the line, it was like gonna be like an hour wait at least, and they told us after about 30 minutes, like, oh, hey, we're all out of brisket. We're all out of ribs, like, blah, blah, blah. So, like, you can only get a few things. So it's like, that sucks. But
Yeah.
whatever. And, like, I heard that announcement, and then the person in front of me goes on their phone and then looks up Franklin Barbecue on Instagram, finds this, like, really, like, pristine photo of, like, this beautiful spread. And then I see them take a screenshot of it and then crop it and
No.
Yeah.
post it to their
Recycle
own
it to their story.
That's
Instagram
crazy.
and
That is
then
crazy.
repost it. And I was like,
That is crazy.
Damn.
Yep.
yeah,
And it's like, why is he doing that?
yeah.
It's
Bro, you did,
all for
I mean,
appearance.
so
I'm in
that's the
Austin.
thing, though.
I went to Franklin's. I did this.
Yeah.
But my favorite version of that story is the real version where it's like, hey, Jay, how was Franklin's? Oh, man, I went, but I couldn't get the fucking brisket. That's a great story to me, to me, because like
Right.
I don't give a fuck how the brisket tastes.
Right,
I care about
right.
how my friend experienced that city, right?
Right.
And so that goes back to initially, it's like, do I like hearing travel stories? Absolutely, but it's mostly about how did my friend enjoy it, or what
Yeah,
did they
it's
pick
like
up?
you
You're
want
really go.
It's very telling.
No, I was gonna say, like, you want the flavor of your friend in there. You
Right.
don't
Yeah.
want your friend to just be like nothing is worse than discussing travel with a coworker,
Yeah, sure.
where they just flip through their camera roll, and you have to just you're in your mind, you're just like, okay, just react.
Yeah.
You have to react.
Oh my
Oh my gosh! Whoa, where is that? And it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
you know
but
what I mean?
If it's someone you don't care about,
no, that's what I'm saying.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah,
Or
yeah.
if your friend is fucking boring, right? Boring person. But yeah, totally. But what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say that Aaron's a nice friend to be like, oh, I want to hear that story that Jay just told of like, I went to Franklin's and they didn't have brisket. I want to hear that's
No,
a very
I-
boring story.
No,
well,
I
it's
want to hear
also-
that
but-
too. I would
Oh,
want to hear
okay.
that.
I will
yeah.
say also,
Yeah.
it serves
Yeah.
two purposes, right? One purpose is like, I want to hear what Jay's experience was like. And
Yeah.
second, like, if I were to go to Austin and go to Franklin's, what information can I garner from Jay who's been there?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it is a sort of like data gathering, like empirical experience.
No, it is. That's
type
why
of thing that I
yeah,
want to know.
That's so I think talking about travel, it's like I don't think it's like a universally I always want to hear about people's travel. And then me too, I know that like not everyone wants to hear about my travel. So like it's like selective, right? It's kind of
Yeah.
like talking about your pets or your
or your dreams,
or
something.
your dreams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
But,
I think she mentioned in the article.
did, she did.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if I'm like gonna go there or if I have been there, I'm really interested because I
Absolutely.
want to
Yeah.
know like, all right, genuinely, what should I do? It's empirical data gathering
Mhm.
where it's like, okay, this is my trusted friend who has good taste, and I trust them.
Hey,
and
here's a
Yeah.
philosophical thought experiment. Imagine you're a tourist who only goes to other countries to stay in a room and look out the window.
yeah,
Let's parse that out. Is that something that could be philosophically aligned with what the author was trying to
Interesting.
say? So you don't really interact with people, but you're just physically there, and you have a non.
you're looking out the window.
Yeah, you're not really interacting with people. So you're not getting affected, nor are you affecting your environment, but you are kind of just like a passive fly on the wall, so to speak.
No, that's stupid.
Obviously, that's stupid. I'm saying, like, philosophically, is that kind of like something that she would be okay with? Because she has what I love about this article, actually, is that clearly she has a strong thesis and she goes pretty hard on her thesis.
Mhm.
And that's why I found myself disagreeing so many times, because she wasn't giving allowance to other.
Yeah.
She was defining things, and that's what academics do.
Yeah.
They just define things and hope no one questions their definitions. But
Right.
like, I feel like if I'm not interacting with the locals, so therefore I'm not trying to gain some sort of commodifiable experience, and if also I'm not affecting the locals and negatively sort of like leaving litter or whatever I'm doing, and if I'm just there physically by my own volition, is that, I guess in her terms, virtuous?
I don't know if she would call that. Actually,
It'd be
it's
a waste of money, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, what does she think is a virtuous like?
Way to live.
Activity.
She never defines what
Right.
virtue means to her, or to me,
Right.
should mean philosophically. Because
Right.
also she ends this article with some pretty devastating prose, and
I know.
it's really good. Like,
Mhm.
it's well written, but it's also like, she goes, travel splits this expanse of time
Mhm.
into chunks that happen before the trip and the chunks that happen after it, obscuring the view of certainty of annihilation. So it's like, basically she's saying we just travel to kill time before we die. It's a
I
funny
mean,
way to end the article.
It's funny, and then if we think about it, like if we're not taking it too seriously, it's true because
but everything is just filling up
no,
time
that's
before
what I'm
we
saying.
die.
It's like you just have events in your life that you plan and look forward to,
Right.
And that's what makes up life.
Right.
And like travel is one of those things where it's like most of us plan it well ahead of time, and spend a lot of time and resources putting it together and like really look forward to it.
Mm.
And it's something almost that like can drive you and like motivate you in your day-to-day life, knowing that like, okay, this is coming up. Same with like a wedding.
Yeah.
Or a I don't know, like a family get together or
Totally.
something, right?
I have a feeling that I need to do more research on her. I have a feeling she's like a fucking nihilist, you know, or an existentialist or something.
So
like.
it's so interesting. I was reading something she wrote about a month ago, way after I
read
this
article.
one, and I didn't know until today that she wrote it. But she has a really interesting life. We can like edit this out if we, but she's autistic,
Okay.
and she
that comes across.
yeah,
That explains so much.
and she she was married, and then recently, or I forget who came first, but she started a relationship with a student
At U
at
Chicago?
U Chicago.
Jesus
And then
Christ.
they fell deeply in love and they got married. Eventually, she divorced her husband. But then they all lived together in the same house and raised her 2 kids together. And she like consults her ex-husband about matters of her current relationship. Like they're a very like modern, interesting
Yeah.
family. And she's like upset. I mean, she's like, because the New Yorker did a profile about like her marriage, basically. And she's like, she approaches things way too philosophically. Even with like marriage, she's like, talks about all these like reasons why she needed to end her old marriage, even though like things were really good.
Yeah.
Purely for the fact that like she didn't feel like, I don't know. It's really, really interesting.
We got to do a
Yeah.
deep dive into this woman, man.
Yeah.
Fascinating brain.
Yeah.
Very U Chicago. I'm so like,
Yeah.
I understand it so much better knowing that she's a professor at the University of
Yeah.
Chicago and she married a
Philosophy.
student.
Married a student.
Going back to like, you know, travel, liking to hear travel stories. Do we have any travel stories that we think are interesting enough to share?
Or have you guys ever felt like really changed by a trip? Like, because another thing that Agnes Callard says in her article is
Agnes Callard, okay.
is her in her essay. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but she says like travel doesn't change people. That like we come back from travel and yes, we might have been changed by it, but then like we act the same, we behave the same, we think the same, we do all the same shit. And so do we feel like we've done anything or went anywhere that actually affected us or changed us in some sort of way?
I will say that in general, like when I've traveled in the moment, I'm taking in these new experiences, introducing myself to things that I've never known. But then like when I come back, then I appreciate like the things that I take for granted every day.
Yep.
In a way that I wouldn't have unless I
Totally.
like was exposing myself to like these different new experiences. So
It's like that feeling of coming home. I'm always excited to
Absolutely.
come home.
I think
Yeah.
there was like a huge factor of travel that's like, yeah, I miss my home. I can't wait to
Yeah.
go home.
Mhm.
This was fun, quote unquote, whatever that
Yeah.
means. But yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm allowed to talk about the Italy trip
Of
a little bit
course.
more, it was definitely fucking sick. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It was dope. I've never seen oceans that blue.
Yeah.
I've never seen art that ornate and brilliant, just genius. Obviously I've seen good art, but seeing the Sistine Chapel was just next level. It really was. And also one thing about the Sistine Chapel that impressed upon me was there's a lot of people there that are just staring at the ceiling the entire time. You're not talking to anyone. You're not looking at your phone. You're just taking in this immensely impressive lineage of art. And it starts with, you know, who and Michelangelo obviously did his part. But I'm learning too, because I'm listening to this audio tape thing, that he had so many apprentices that he would task to do this portion or take that book of the Bible. And so it's this weird collage of art that is, Michelangelo was maybe the brainchild for a lot of these artists. He was definitely their teacher for a lot of it.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, I guess he had the intern do that one like
section.
It was like this
Yeah.
one section of Adam and Eve that his like protege was doing. And then you can tell it's a little bit it's a little bit different. It's like the shading's done different. To me as an artist, I appreciate that. And it makes me think about like, man, like in the eyes of the greats, or when you're working with great people and you have you have access and the opportunity to make history, quote unquote. We don't know right now what is going to make history as art down the line,
Yeah.
but there are going to be guaranteed there's going to be people randomly who are kind of talked about or like referenced with associations and names.
Right.
And I think that's really, I don't know if it's beautiful. I'm not going to go that far, but it's just so cool to me. I think about that, you
Yeah.
know? And I think about all the people next to me at the Sistine Chapel who are just in awe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, also it took us like an hour to get there because the tour is so long through the
Yeah.
Vatican City.
Yeah.
And everyone's like sweating.
Yep.
But it was special. And I'm so glad I did it. I'm so glad. I've looked at so many photos of the Sistine Chapel and then seeing it in person was just not the same. You
It
know?
still trips me out that a turtle painted that shit. A ninja turtle.
Dude, the turtle who loves pizza and skateboarding? Exactly. Just like me. Yeah.
Oh my God.
How about you, Celine? Have you had a travel experience that like changed your life?
Yeah, I feel like, and changed my life, not like, oh, going here made me realize this was my passion. Like none of that stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like a lot of small things. Yeah. I think learning history for me, when I travel, I love history. And when I travel, that's kind of the focus. It's like, I want to learn the history of the place. So learning about new, like, parts of history or moments in history that I didn't know about before, I feel like that is life-changing in the sense that like it gives me such a deep appreciation for like humans in a way that like modern life doesn't. Because I can get pretty like what's the word? Misanthropic. Yeah, because modern life can make us really hate people sometimes, but when I travel, I realize that like humans are amazing. And then nature. I love nature, and I think seeing like there's certain things that I've seen that have made me like, oh my God.
Yeah, mouth agape, just like in awe.
And then you realize
Absolutely.
like, whoa.
Well, you know,
Oh my God. It's like you can't even put it into words.
but she brings up in the article something someone wrote about, or a hypothetical maybe. Because like, yeah, like I guess some people can look at the Grand Canyon and be like, this does not look like what I thought it would. But they would be missing the forest for the trees, or the saying goes. It's like, that's not the point.
Right.
The point is that like, this is what the Grand Canyon looks like. Now you know what it looks like.
Yeah.
You know, now that you know that it doesn't look like the postcards, isn't that even better? Like, why would you complain about that? Even if it didn't meet your expectations.
Yeah.
So there was that. And going back to a point earlier, it's like, are we just filling in time before death? And I was listening to a podcast about death, weirdly enough, earlier today. And it was one of the personas said something interesting. It was like, we're all suffocating in a burlap sack. Do you want it to be colored red or blue? Right? So it's like, yeah, like, what's the point? Who cares? Like, but that's a nihilistic perspective, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, we're all gonna die anyway. It doesn't matter. But I would argue that it does matter if my burlap sack is red or blue. You know what I mean? Because if I know it's blue, which I like more than red,
Then
I might suffocate with a little bit more
less.
ease.
Yeah,
you know what
yeah.
I mean? Like, and so ultimately, my philosophical stance is everyone, first of all, has the right and should be encouraged to pursue things that fulfill them within reason.
Yeah.
I think hot takes like this are really great because they get a conversation going, just like this one, and it makes us question maybe some of our assumptions about things we take for granted. But I will maintain that like you could replace the case against travel with any other word and make, from her logical framework, anything could be a waste of your time because she just ends it on this nihilistic note, right?
Right.
Which I think is, I think that was the thing about the article that really bothered me the most. It was like,
Is the ending.
it wasn't like a spend your time doing something else. There was no sort of hope in her prose.
Right,
It was
right.
pretty depressing.
Well,
to
that's why I
conclude.
liked it, because it's like, well, that's her argument and that's it. Like,
It's a valid argument.
Yeah.
And we encourage all of our listeners, please check out this article on NewYorker.com.
It's a fun read.
I also think that it'd be fun for us to do periodic episodes that are about articles that we read.
Yeah.
Because I'm reading one right now in the New Yorker about this young, I guess, artist or lecturer. I forget her name, but she's all about anti-capitalism, which I know is boring, but her perspective on it is kind of unique. Maybe we'll bring it up next time. But I'm thinking a lot about capitalism these days.
Oh, cool.
Which is I know it's kind of boring. It reminds me of
No.
being like a sophomore in college and like learning Marx for the first time, you know?
It's not, but I think it's the equivalent of like if you were living in antiquity, like in the classical times, you would be thinking about what was
The
there?
gods. I don't
Yeah,
know.
you'd be thinking about the gods. It's like, and also because like capitalism is our system right now,
You know, one thing I learned from this podcast
and it's new.
is like, yeah, exactly. Capitalism. I mean, this is such a non-sequitur, but this may be a glimpse into next week's episode if we choose to do it. It's like everyone thinks that capitalism works because it takes people out of poverty, and like, you know, all the greatest countries in the world have been capitalist. But that is actually like just not true. Like Rome,
Yeah,
if you go back
it's
to the
not
Roman
true.
Empire,
Yeah.
I mean, capitalist, like they
Yeah.
had coins that were introduced at some point,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? But it
yeah.
wasn't a capitalist-driven society
Yeah.
at all. Historically, favors and goods have been traded
capitalism
as
has not
gifts.
been around.
Historically, humans
yeah.
give people gifts,
Right.
and then after you receive a generous gift, then you feel ingratiated towards that person, and that's how you build rapport between countries. Nowadays, it's so broken down into like, what can I get? Like you assume you're going to
Monetary
get
exchange,
something.
Yeah.
But and that blew my mind because I always thought, like, even she was saying how like Adam Smith, you know, the father of economics, like just lied so much in his essays about like why capitalism was good. He would make
You
up
know
all
what?
these
Yeah.
statistics and figures and straight up
They're
facts
all liars.
about
yeah.
history
Yeah.
just to get his fucking name, and we still
Right.
talk about him.
And we still talk about him.
We still talk about that motherfucker, you know?
It's like Hassan Minaj.
Oh shit, dude, Hassan Minaj, you heard about
No,
this?
I mean, we
No.
don't have to go into this.
Okay.
Well, we can talk about off pod.
Well, you know what? We'll talk about that in next week's episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of the Side Dish Podcast. Like and subscribe on Instagram @_the Side Dish. And if you dare, please comment below your favorite place to travel and your best travel stories. Arr. And with that said, we'll catch you guys in the next episode.
Bye.